Cypress Development Corp. is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp. trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Thank you, Jim.
Stewart, big BC logging truckers protest in Vancouver, or rally as you like to call it. What were they trying to tell us, and are there any solutions to a shrinking fiber supply of lumber in British Columbia?
Well, that's a good question. There is a shortage of fiber for the sawmills and other uses. It's trickling down to the pulp and paper industry. There was a curtailment at the Crofton paper plant where they don't get the materials they need from the sawmills that they use to turn into paper. So it has a knock-on effect, and of course that impacts urban jobs as well. There's a lot of people in the supply chain, professional services. When the forest industry shrinks, everything shrinks through that entire supply chain. So people are feeling the closure. I think the count is now over 10 sawmills that have gone down. Some of them might never reopen because of a combination of factors. It certainly the supply is part of it, but it's not the only part. If you talk to people in industry who are concerned about a very large weight of new regulations and reviews by the provincial government to subject everything they do to levels of scrutiny that are, in a lot of cases, these are the things that some of the groups that don't want any logging for various reasons, they're pushing the provincial government to pressure the industry in different ways. So it's not just the fiber supply. Obviously, the fiber supply is tied back to ultimately changes in climate, where the pine beetles weren't frozen and eliminated in harsh cold snaps in winter, which traditionally has been how they were kept in check, but they, in warming conditions, survived and they killed off a huge amount of forests in the interior of BC. So that's really where a lot of it started. But don't forget, we've got other problems on the island too. It's not just the lack of fiber because of pine beetles. You've got these arguments around so-called old growth, which really isn't old growth in the vast number of cases, that some people are lobbying to have banned. So you got all these pressures on the industry, and I think the pressure valve just had too much pressure on it last week, kind of exploded when over 100, I've heard up to 300, I'm not sure, logging trucks drove into downtown Vancouver during the annual Union of British Columbia Municipalities Conference. That's a time when the mayors, councillors, municipal leaders from all over the province gather once a year. The main purpose is to talk to provincial ministers and officials to, ask for money to build sewers and, just all the necessities that people have when they live in built areas. So it's also a time when different issues come to the fore and are talked about. Probably a lot of people saw in the news the arrival of these logging trucks. I was actually down near the convention center at that time, and standing there, you could hear a lot of people cheering. I didn't hear one person booing, even though they were probably disrupting the few people trying to get around downtown in their cars, but they seemed to not generate any great ill will because people could see the signs. They're talking about their jobs and communities. So that was unusual. I've never seen that before. I've covered forestry and these issues for a few decades in Vancouver and never seen anything like that. It means that people are so concerned about what they're facing that they want to send a message. And the message was, it has something to do with the supply of fiber, but there's other issues too that can be managed. And they wanted to send a message not just to the mayors, but they want to send a message to the Premier John Horgan, and his people as well, whose offices are right downtown there as well.
What do you believe are the solutions to this, or are there any?
Well, I think they need to find out maybe show a little empathy for the communities. A lot of them are smaller ones where these mills are located. Yes, there are mills in Greater Vancouver, but where they really have a proportionally high impact on a local economy is in the smaller communities, where one mill goes down, that could take out a significant percentage of local jobs, and right away that affects the community. So include those people in. There's been some cases this year where just simple transparency would go a long way to letting people feel part of what's happening and not as afraid. I mean, there's real fear here. Everything people have invested in their homes and families, it's all at stake. The logging trucks, a lot of them are contractors, and their life savings are tied up in that vehicle. They want to know what's going on, but they haven't been able to find out. So that's a message I would send to the Forest Minister, Parliamentary Secretary of the Forest, and the Premier to say, you guys could make this easier on yourselves, and not just say, blame the BC Liberals. And, there are those from the former government who would say, yeah, we were maybe not as attentive to all these issues as we could have been. But the problem exists today, and the people who are running things today need to be the ones to work on them. And another problem is there's a market system. I don't want to get into stumpage. I'm sure you don't want me to, Jim. This really complicated apparatus, which is basically how the province gets money from the forest industry so that it can have revenues to build roads and schools and things. Stumpage. It's not working. There's some distortions. It's just incredibly complicated. There's no single fix. If I had that, I'm sure people would say, let's hear what it is. I don't have the fix. People who are on this stuff need to admit that it's broken. I think there's a maybe lack of that. And also I think there needs to be maybe a little less pressure on some of the pain points. The workers' compensation review, some of the new philosophy on managing lands, the uncertainties around the UNDRIP or United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. I mean, it's all, of course, important to recognize the reconciliation agenda and make sure that gets done. But again, it comes down to transparency and just tell people what you're up to. So I think there's ways to make it better in the short term if they work at it.
Well, also, could one of the problems be the NDP is largely an urban-based political party? The BC Liberals represent a lot of rural areas. Could there be some political reasoning to it? Well, you didn't vote for me, so I'm not going to help.
Yeah. I didn't see, I saw one, minister from the government or one senior official who was elected, who was on the pavement as well, observing things. So I think that was good to see. But for the most part, there wasn't much of an appearance by the BC NDP to go out and meet people who'd come in, empathize with their plight. Of course, they were busy. They had a lot of meetings with the mayors and so on, so got to cut them a little slack. But generally, I think this is a group that is much happier, more comfortable meeting with the environmentalists who want to turn most of the province into nature preserves and parks, rather than meeting with the industry who create jobs. Finding the balance in that is I think, almost too difficult a problem for the BC NDP. They're going to get pulled over to that green thing. They have this political problem. They rely for their political survival on, of course, the Green Party, those three caucus members who aren't very interested in people making a living based on natural resources. They're against pretty much everything in that domain. So that's the political reality, and I think those who think it's important to have an export-driven economy, which is our current reality. Most of the rural economy is based on that. It creates terrific GDP impacts, but it's also, especially forestry, it's a sustainable industry. We've got at UBC alone, there's I think 50 professors of forestry. They teach their students how to do things right. We're among the best in the world, building wood frame buildings that are green. A lot of leadership in this area. So nothing to be ashamed of there, and the province should hug this industry and make it part of their story.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after the break.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, with the federal election campaign now about halfway over, anything interesting out there that would help resource development?
Well, we're not seeing energy issues coming to the fore. I think there's so many other things out there where energy is coming in. It's really through the lens of climate, and that's certainly the hope of the Liberals to emphasize, whereas the Conservatives are more likely to be talking about energy, the energy industry, the benefits from that. So that's kind of how they're squaring off. But there's one thing that popped up this week that's a little different from the usual. The BC Liberal campaign, or the federal Liberals in BC, I should say, have for a number of years now, when it's election season, had their own Made in BC campaign that has got some things that are tailored, they think, to local voters. And one of those that's popped up is their promise to phase out salmon farming, which is kind of surprising because it's the fourth largest salmon farming industry in the world that we have in BC. It creates the highest value of any agricultural export we have, or none. And it helps to protect wild salmon because every salmon that's farmed is a salmon that doesn't have to be caught in the wild. So what's happened is the lobbyists have gotten into the Liberals, and they've created this very destructive promise to eradicate farms, which means that communities like Campbell River, Port Hardy, Nanaimo, Gold River, a lot of smaller ones, also a lot of First Nations like the Kitasoo First Nation up in Klemtu. Their First Nation don't have a lot of options for the economy. It used to be 90% employment, and then salmon farming came in, and now everyone's got a job, a great job. And, you know, the federal Liberals are saying, we're not interested in you people. We're going to serve the misinformation and hype from those who falsely say that salmon farming is a threat to the environment. I mean, it's not. I've spoken to numerous scientists with global reputations as researchers and scholars on this, and I've asked them, you know, should I be concerned about salmon farming? Does it hurt wild salmon? All of them say the same thing, which is no, we have no evidence that it is. So, yet you do have a sort of hysterical group of people who, you know, I think wealthy lodge owners, there's one in particular spending a lot of money to create this false impression that there's a environmental hazard. And somehow the money talks in this case, and the Liberals have said, yeah, we'll go along with that. So they put it in terms of, we're going to move it on land, but it's impossible. There's no technology that lets you do that successfully. It's been tried, experimented with, but it doesn't work. Not yet anyways. And in as much as it has worked a little bit, it's been because there's millions in taxpayer subsidies required that really just gets flushed away. So, it's really a fantasy that they can move it on land and get the same economic benefits and jobs that won't happen. So really what they're saying then is, we're getting rid of your jobs, and we're going to destroy your economy, and we're going to try to get some votes in tight ridings where people have believed the hype and misinformation. So it's pretty cynical electioneering, in my opinion, and I think they should be ashamed of themselves.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the 2019 drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, you have an important question for the mayor of Victoria, Lisa Helps. Why is she suing the oil companies, the same people who supply fuel for her Civic vehicles?
Oh, that's a good question. That's another one that came up at UBCM last week. There was an attempt by a couple of municipalities to get onto the agenda the idea that the way to make friends and influence people is by suing them. They want to develop relationships through these climate lawsuits. They're asking they asked all the municipalities of BC to sign on to these lawsuits. It's a campaign imported from the USA where, of course, they love suing each other. That's what Americans do, isn't it? But they want us Canadians to take on this idea, which is sort of problematic. I mean, whenever you import things, even import a car into Canada, you got to change the headlights and maybe the seatbelts. This thing hasn't been adjusted at all. It's just a silly American idea. But they've been convinced that they need to sue oil and gas companies for climate harms caused by the provision of fuels to consumers over the years. And, it certainly springs to mind the fact that 80% of the emissions are caused by the combustion of fuels. So it's when a person drives around in their car, or a city employee drives a snowplow around, or the city runs their swimming pool, heats it on natural gas. I mean, they really need to be suing themselves, I think, if they want to do something about this problem using litigation. But as I think the mayors, being in reality a much more level-headed group, had the chance to vote on this, they said no last week. So the whole idea was blown out of the water by the good people elected by the good people who live in communities. So I think that was a show of common sense. But it's certainly not over, and there is going to be, from what Victoria is now saying, there's going to be a new chapter. They're not interested in collaborating, sitting down, hashing out these difficult problems, because none of it's simple. They just want to have another lawsuit. So they're bringing in a lawyer, actually the same lawyer who just was told by the Federal Court of Appeal, or the BC Court of Appeal, that his argument against Trans Mountain Pipeline was so bad that all 5 justices who reviewed it said, no, go away. So it was 5-0 ruling for Joe Arvey's case. This is the lawyer who has offered his quote-unquote free services to rebuild a legal strategy against oil and gas companies. And you know what that's about. I mean, he's setting up to create a nice payday for himself over decades through a class action lawsuit that local homeowners, instead of getting their garbage picked up, they'll be paying for a lawyer to get rich with a class action lawsuit that will never be resolved. It's quite a scam, Jim. But there you go. That's how things seem to work these days.
Well, Lisa Helps, the mayor that had the statue of Sir John A. Macdonald taken down in Victoria. She was one of the attendees at the Communist Chinese Hospitality Suite at the Union of BC Municipalities Convention, and she tried to stop reporter Bob Mackin from taking her picture there. I guess she wasn't that proud to be caught eating the food from the communists.
Yes, thank you for your hostility. But the Chinese, they got some donuts as well. I think the mayor of Port Coquitlam brought some Tim Hortons along to send a message. Quite a few mayors showed up, and you consider the number, just say foreign students from China studying BC, and all the people born in China who are Canadians, and live in the Lower Mainland, it's really difficult for mayors. You can't say, you reject that. The same evening I was at the National Day celebration of the Republic of South Korea. I had some very nice Korean food. I didn't go to the Chinese reception myself, and I think Lisa Helps felt a need to attend that. I'm sympathetic to those who didn't want to reject it. I'm also, I see where Brad West is coming from. He's really the one who started this campaign, and they're all struggling with different sides of this. So how do you proceed through it? We'll see whether they do it again next year. I'm sure it'll be something they talk about when they plan their convention next time around. But I hope Bob got his picture. Did he get a photo in the end?
I think it was mostly a great
photo. It'd be good to have a picture of her in a story, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it was mostly her hand in the camera lens.
Oh, well, that's not good. That's PR 101, isn't it? Media training 101.
Well, I don't know. We can put those pictures in with Sir John A. and the horse carriages in Victoria. By the way, they're against fossil fueled vehicles. Why doesn't Victoria immediately stop using them for civic services and use maybe horse-drawn carriages?
Well, I noticed that you're talking about Ben Isaac's motion. He's the Marxist or communist, proudly so, counselor who has a lot of ideas that are pretty much out there. One of them was, he wants to ban the horseless carriage, but he also wants to ban the horse-drawn carriages of Victoria. I mean, what does he want? Everyone on a bicycle, apparently. But don't forget, Jim, this is the same council that approved 2 years ago. I looked it up, so I could be certain about this point. I pulled the building permit. There's a brand new Maserati dealership. That's the exotic Italian car that, burns a lot of gas. Lisa Helps' council approved that. And Ben Isaac, they approved it. So there they are, building dealership. There's a new big expansion. Every time I go into the Victoria Airport, I can see the progress of, it's probably, I would roughly say, doubling the size of the departure hall of Victoria Airport. Those planes aren't flying on, unicorn emissions. They're using jet fuel, obviously. So if they want to talk about something that they believe is a problem, starting closer to home would be an idea that I think most people, certainly most mayors, would support. So Victoria is kind of out there. I mean, but it's out there on other things too.
I was just going to say, did Lisa Helps take a sailboat to the convention in Vancouver?
Well, I don't know that she didn't, but I'd be surprised if she did. I mean, I think she's trying to do her best in a difficult space, so I'm sympathetic to her plight, but I think there's a room right now for her to be just showing a little more leadership that's sensible and collaborative and not just automatically bend to this, radical fringe element that you don't have to placate those people. That's not her job. Her job's to serve her residents and make sure, my home's in Victoria. I rely on the city of Victoria to provide the basic services. That's what I want them to do. And I'm pretty sure all my neighbors feel the same way. I don't need them to do all this other propaganda stuff. But there are important things they need to do with zoning. Make sure that when we build new houses, they're super energy efficient. I'm A-okay with, you want to try out some electric buses? Maybe they'll cost my taxes a little more. But if you think you got to try that out, we'll go for it. That's something you can do locally. But this idea of these exotic class action lawsuits that will take decades to resolve, that will never be resolved, only the lawyers get rich, let's just leave that stuff aside. We don't want it or need it.
In California now, you have to put solar panels on your house if you build a new one. Why not do that here? Well,
it's in Canada when you do that, or Germany in this part of the globe, it's probably 11% efficient. If you go to Southern California, New Mexico, you get 25% efficiency from solar panels, and hopefully that goes up. And maybe there's someone who says, no, it's higher now. Maybe it's going up already, but it's pretty low. Whereas natural gas, it could be, way over 60% efficiency. You're getting all that energy. And one of the biggest problems we have globally we're wasting too much energy, and we can't keep doing that. We can't keep throwing out all that food that's got energy used to make it. We can't use inefficient energy sources or use energy inefficiently. Solar's good because it captures a renewable project, but it's not our biggest problem right now. Our biggest problem is to make energy uses more efficient. If we solve that, we can actually solve all the other problems we have.
Stewart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the ResourceWorks Society. His website, resourceworks.com, his Twitter handle, @SJMuir. And if you have any questions for Stewart or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.